You know, there is something rather peculiar that happens to certain people. They walk into a room and within moments, they can sense exactly what everyone is feeling, what they're hiding, what they're afraid to say. And we've been told this is a gift, haven't we? This ability to read between the lines, to see beneath the surface. But I want to suggest something different to you today. That being understood too well and understanding others too deeply might be one of the loneliest experiences a human being can have. Let me explain what I mean by being understood too well. I'm not talking about someone who knows your favorite color or remembers your birthday. I'm talking about those rare individuals who see straight through to your core, who recognize the patterns you've been running your entire life, who can sense the wound beneath your anger, the fear beneath your confidence, the longing beneath your independence. When you meet such a person, something extraordinary happens. For perhaps the first time in your life, you feel completely seen. Not the version of yourself you present to the world, not the role you've been playing, but the actual, authentic, vulnerable human being that you are. And this feeling is both the most relieving and the most terrifying thing you can experience. Because when someone sees you this clearly, you can no longer hide. All your carefully constructed defenses, all your sophisticated masks, all your clever deflections become useless. You stand there completely exposed, like someone who has been wearing clothes their entire life, suddenly finding themselves naked in broad daylight. And here's what nobody tells you about this experience. The relief of being seen is immediately followed by a kind of panic. Because if this person can see you so clearly, what else do they see? What other secrets are written across your face? What other wounds are you broadcasting without knowing it? You begin to feel like a book that someone is reading, and you have no control over which pages they're turning to. Every conversation becomes an exercise in vulnerability you didn't choose. Every interaction leaves you feeling simultaneously grateful and violated. But here's the strange paradox. The very thing you've been longing for your entire life, to be truly understood, becomes the thing you start to fear. Because understanding, real understanding, is not the gentle, accepting thing we imagine it to be. Understanding is surgical. It cuts through everything false to reach what's true. When someone understands you deeply, they see not just your beauty, but your ugliness. Not just your strength, but your weakness. Not just your love, but your hatred. They see the parts of yourself you've spent years trying to forget, trying to heal, trying to transcend. I once knew a woman who met someone who could read her like this. Within hours of knowing him, he had identified patterns in her behavior that she had been unconscious of for decades. He could predict her reactions, understand her motivations, see through her stories to the truth beneath them. And you know what happened? She ran. Not because he was cruel or judgmental, but because being seen that clearly felt like being dissected while still alive. She told me later that it was like having someone shine a flashlight into every dark corner of her soul without permission. Every conversation with him became a mirror she didn't want to look into. Every insight he shared felt like an invasion, even though it was offered with love. But let's talk about the other side of this equation. What about the person who sees too much? What about those individuals who cannot help but perceive the hidden layers in everyone they meet? These people face a different kind of loneliness. They walk through the world like someone who can see colors that others cannot see, hear frequencies that others cannot hear. They notice the micro-expressions that reveal what someone is really feeling. They sense the energy beneath the words. They feel the unspoken tensions in every room they enter. And this creates a terrible isolation. Because when you can see so much, you realize how little most people actually see each other. You watch people have entire conversations without ever really meeting. You observe relationships built on mutual misunderstanding. You witness the profound loneliness that exists even in crowded rooms. The person who sees deeply begins to feel like they're living in a different reality from everyone else. They're speaking a language nobody understands, noticing things nobody else notices, feeling things nobody else feels. They learn to translate their perceptions into safer, more palatable forms. Instead of saying, "I can see that you're terrified of being abandoned." They say, "You seem a little stressed." Instead of, "Your anger is really just grief in disguise," they say, "That must be frustrating." They become emotional translators, constantly converting their deep seeing into shallow observations that won't threaten or overwhelm others. And this translation work is exhausting. It's like being a native speaker of a language, but having to communicate only in broken phrases because nobody else is fluent. And here's where it gets really difficult. When you can see people this clearly, you also see their pain. You see the childhood wound that's still bleeding. You see the fear that's driving their anger. You see the loneliness that's hiding behind their confidence. And your heart breaks, over and over again, for every person you meet, because you can see how much they're suffering, how much they're struggling, how much they're pretending to be okay when they're not. But here's the cruel irony. The very people who need understanding the most are often the ones who resist it the most fiercely. They've built their entire identity around not being seen, around keeping their pain hidden, around maintaining their masks. When someone comes along who can see through all of that, it feels like a threat to their very survival. I remember sitting with a friend who was going through a difficult divorce. She was telling me how fine she was, how she was handling everything perfectly, how this was actually the best thing that could have happened. But I could see the devastation in her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly when she spoke, the forced brightness in her voice. And I had a choice. I could let her maintain her story, or I could gently reflect back what I was actually seeing. I chose the latter, very carefully, very gently, and she exploded. Not with sadness, but with rage. How dare I suggest she wasn't fine? How dare I see what she wasn't ready to show? This creates a strange dance in relationships. The person who sees deeply learns to dim their perception, to pretend they see less than they do, to allow others to maintain their illusions. They become experts at managing their own insight, doling it out in small doses that won't overwhelm or threaten. Meanwhile, the person being seen learns to ration their authenticity, revealing themselves in careful increments, always ready to retreat behind their defenses if the exposure becomes too much. Both people end up performing a kind of elaborate choreography, moving closer and then pulling back, revealing and then concealing, connecting and then protecting. It's exhausting for both parties. The one who sees must constantly monitor how much truth the other person can handle. The one being seen must constantly gauge how much authenticity is safe to reveal. Neither person can simply be themselves. Neither person can relax completely. And so we have this paradox. The very thing that could create the deepest intimacy, complete understanding, becomes the thing that prevents it. Because complete understanding requires complete vulnerability, and complete vulnerability feels like complete danger to most people. But here's what I've learned after years of observing this dynamic. The loneliness of deep understanding is not a problem to be solved. It's a stage to be moved through. Because eventually, if you're patient, if you're gentle, if you're willing to let people approach truth at their own pace, something beautiful happens. The person who has been seen begins to relax into being known. They discover that being understood, even in their imperfection, is actually a form of love. They realize that the person who sees them clearly is not trying to fix them or change them or judge them. They're simply witnessing them. And there's something profoundly healing about being witnessed without agenda. And the person who sees deeply learns to hold their perception with compassion rather than judgment, with acceptance rather than the need to fix or change. They learn that seeing clearly doesn't mean they have to do anything about what they see. Sometimes the most loving thing is simply to see and to hold space for whatever is there. When this happens, when two people can meet in the space of complete understanding without fear, without defense, without the need to hide or protect, something sacred emerges. A kind of intimacy that most people never experience. A connection that goes beyond words, beyond roles, beyond the surface of things. It's like two people removing all their armor and discovering that they don't need it anymore. That they can be completely vulnerable and completely safe at the same time. That they can be seen in their entirety and loved not despite their flaws, but including them. This is what I call soul-level intimacy. And it's rare because it requires both people to be willing to be completely real. No performance, no pretense, no protection. Just two human beings meeting in the naked truth of who they are. But getting there requires moving through the loneliness. The loneliness of seeing too much. The loneliness of being seen too clearly. The loneliness of living in a world where most people are afraid of real intimacy, real understanding, real connection. So if you are someone who sees too much, know this. Your perception is not a burden, even though it often feels like one. It's a capacity for depth in a shallow world. It's a doorway to intimacy that most people never find. And if you are someone who has been seen too clearly, know this. Your discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is right. That you've encountered someone who can love you not for who you pretend to be, but for who you actually are. The loneliness of deep understanding is the price we pay for authentic connection, but it's also the path to it. Because only by moving through the fear of being truly known can we discover the joy of being truly loved. And that, my friends, is worth every moment of loneliness it takes to find.